fine. So we're on. But so then I'll ask Tanya when she's in the chat room how it sounds to her too.
Sounds good.
So cool. All right. We're gonna do. Let's see. Wait. See, I'm always on the wrong windows here because I'm like juggling two computers here to get this to work. Here we go. All right. There's my warning. Oh, you guys can't hear this again. See, sorry, you guys don't get the cuts. It's a long story. I'll start talking and let you know when the intros. It's Warren doing the Free Your Minds and then the green sophisticated opening. So here we go. Here's the Annoying Peasant Radio Show, everybody.
Get ready to free your minds, advance freedom, and better all of society with the Annoying Peasants.
And now for something completely different.
Humans do have an amazing capacity for believing what they choose. I think before we go around killing people, we had better make damn sure of our evidence.
They lied to you. It's time to learn the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
From what was once an inarticulate mass of lifeless tissues, may I now present a cultured, sophisticated man about town.
Here we go. We're going to do another show tonight. What do you think?
Are you sure?
Well, actually, I'm sure of nothing, as it turns out. That's a whole another that's another show right there, Brad. Sure, get us off track right away.
Are we scratching off? Is the intro done, Tom?
Yeah, we're out.
Hey, we're welcoming everybody to the Annoying Peasant Radio Show tonight. How are you, everybody? Thanks for joining us. My name is Brad, and I am joined by my very good friend Tom and our new best buddy Tim. And we again thank you all for joining us. We hope you enjoy our show. I would bet a nickel that this show is going to make you think tonight.
Oh, sweet! You are the consummate professional there in that tease.
So, in the spirit also of Rosanna Dana.
Oh, it's sweet.
The tonight's episode is entitled "Organs for Sale." And so, what's this in Rosanna Dana speak? What's this about someone caring whether I sell my organ or not? And why do they not care when I sell my piano?
Hey, right? Careful what organ you're speaking of.
Oh, that's not what we're talking about?
Right.
My old Wurlitzer?
Yeah. Hey, call it what you will. I don't. Right?
Wow, we're off to a great start.
Yep, right in the gutter. Tim's like, oh, my goodness. This is my deal, and they threw me in the trash.
Oh, he just texted me that it's his last show.
That's it. Oh, yeah.
That didn't last long. Oh, well, next.
Yeah, that kind of happens.
So not that kind of organ, though.
All right. Yeah, we'll get to it. We'll explain it.
Yeah, this is going to be seriously interesting, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Thanks, Tim, for your great work on this.
Okay. I'm going to break in here and do the big picture on the show just so for anybody who might be new to listening to us kind of gets a feel for what we're about here. Yeah, exactly. So I'll get through this quickly. It's not too long. Most hold that we put forth a radical political philosophy. That is the political philosophy of freedom. This philosophy is essentially that everyone is free to pursue his or her own life interest, provided the pursuit is a peaceful one. That's Leonard Reed, basically. Simply, it is unjust to initiate force against another. Most are untroubled at this point. I get that. But to determine if force is being initiated against another, property rights must be established. The freedom philosophy is often articulated supporting property rights rooted in self-ownership. And that's going to become very relevant here tonight. For if you do not own yourself, it is difficult to conceive of how you could own anything at all. The freedom philosophy asserts that each person has an ownership right in him or herself and therefore has the right to exercise sole dominion over his or her own body. Relevant to the forthcoming discussion, if this is the case, one would have the authority to sell his or her own body or body parts. If not, the case is that one does not, in fact, owns one's body. Sorry. Well, you might own more than one body, too. You never know. We attempt to argue in a coherent manner that you are, in fact, the rightful owner of you, and as such have the authority to buy and sell organs, or for anything else for that matter, provided one engages only in voluntary exchange. Please stay with us and consider joining the conversation by joining the chat room. And I got a little off on a tangent, which I know is shocking to you guys. I should have warned you before I said that. I was listening to some George Carlin YouTubes, and I'm going to play some next week, and I guess I have a warning, it's not for the kiddies, and I guess that's kind of normal with George Carlin, but this is off topic a little bit, but I thought it was a good one, and his quote from one of these clips is, "Governments don't want a population capable of critical thinking," which is my point here. My relevance is that's what we're going to engage in, hopefully. They want obedient workers, people just smart enough to run the machines and just dumb enough to passively accept their situation. I would argue indoctrinated. I will play a clip of the segment by George Carlin next week. I think next week will be a let out your frustration show, kind of Rage Against the Machine deal. And again, warning about the George Carlin clip. Again, that'll be next week, so no warnings that we're aware of for tonight. But on this episode, we're going to contemplate the free market again. I guess we talk about that just about every show, specifically a free market for your organs. But think about that a second. While you're at it, think about this from a Dr. Walter E. Williams article. He says, there are more than 88,000 Americans on the organ transplant waiting list, and I know Tim has a lot of stats and stuff here, and maybe that number's not exactly correct, but that's according to his article. He says roughly 10% of them will die before receiving an organ. And here's the important part. These lost lives are not so much an act of God as they are an act of Congress because of its 1984 National Organ Transplant Act as amended, which prohibits payment to organ donors. So are you okay with this situation? Would you be okay with it if you or a loved one was eagerly waiting for a desperately needed kidney, for instance? Even if you were in a position of minimal political influence, would you be okay with this? When contemplating the efficacy of the state in its actions, should the lives lost due to this policy be part of the calculation? How would organs be handled in a free market? How would the poor fare? Would only the affluent benefit from the action of a free market in organs? So much to think about. Stay with us. Tim's going to lay it all out for you. He's the man. So with that, I got to hand it over to Brad. Let him go now.
Okay, this is Brad's comment. I think you guys are crazy.
Yes, we already know that.
We are.
Organs. Selling organs, selling part of your body, that is insane.
Yes, it is. But
no person should be able to do that without, the government should tell us whether we can or can't do it, and they've told us we can't do it. So what are you thinking?
I don't know. I don't know yet.
We're here to rage against the machine.
There you go. Thank you, Tim.
All right. So our announcements. So am I not doing the Cinco de Mayo thing?
Well, it's in the news items.
Okay. Well, we're gonna skip that. So, AgriFest 2015 at the Villa Marie Conference Center and Retreat, September 24th to 27th. We keep talking about this. When are we having Nick on, Tom?
I contacted him to ask him if he would be available next week, and I haven't gotten a response yet.
So save the date. That's for you folks wherever you're listening. That's south of Minneapolis, Minnesota, up in the Great North.
Yes.
And we'll give you more details, and it's a really cool thing, very worthy of a person's time, we think. Tom's little assignment for this week is watch Justice, What's the Right Thing to Do? Episode 10, entitled The Good Citizen. It's from Harvard Business School, Michael Sandel. Well, comment on that, Tom?
I'm actually I'm halfway through the second lecture of episode 10. I haven't actually completed it. But you remember this? You'll remember, Brad. Who was the guy? This how poor my memory is. Pro golfer. He wanted to use the cart because he had some leg issue.
Yep, sure.
Casey? Was this?
Casey, yes.
Casey something. Anyway, that's part of the discussion. They talk about Aristotle a little bit and what politics is, what would be the purpose of it and stuff, and then they get into, and you can say, what's the relevance to golfing? It's actually quite an interesting conversation on this one. So that's all I can say at this point. I don't want to let the whole cat out of the bag.
Nope, we weren't looking for another lecture, so that's good. Our next live show will be next Tuesday evening, May 12th at 7 p.m. Central Time, as always. And we've already pretty much discussed that it's going to be a Rage Against the Machine, which, boy, that's going to be that's really enticing for somebody to call and listen in on, Tom.
Yes, I mean,
but again, we hope we make you think.
Yes,
that's our goal. So join us then, and the chat room is open.
And by the way, Tanya does say that the audio sounds fine to her.
Fantastic.
So, okay, just so a little FYI.
We're rocking and rolling.
So far, we're no breakdowns at the moment. All right. If we're good there, let's move on to the El Nuzo. Did you catch that?
So, am I continuing? Today is Cinco de Mayo.
Yes.
It is not the anniversary of Mexicans' independence.
Did you know that?
I think I did, but it's not something that's very widely publicized, is it?
See, I don't know that I knew that. I was looking around for it. Did you know that, Tim? That Cinco de Mayo is not the anniversary of Mexican independence?
You know what? I will be honest. I'm not. I'm not a big a follower of the holiday or the history of it. I will plead ignorance on this one.
I did not know that.
I grew up in Chicago, so what can I tell you?
I did not know that for like 50 plus years of my life. I'm like, wow. See, this kind of like this whole libertarian thing. I learned a whole bunch of new stuff later in life. So I'm kind of used to going through this again. But anyway, Go ahead. Sorry, Brad.
We're late bloomers, Tom.
Way.
It commemorates the Battle of Puebla, May 5th, 1862. It's more widely celebrated, who knew, in the United States, with us enjoying all this quality Mexican food.
Well,
right?
I think it's the margaritas more than anything, is my guess.
Well, exactly. Call it what you want.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about that?
Not really. I just thought since it was Cinco de Mayo, we ought to throw that in and let people know we actually know what day it is.
And that we are not at some fine Mexican restaurant. The three of us are not. We're dedicated professionals.
Yeah,
right?
but we should be at a fine Mexican restaurant.
Should be. That's if we had a. Never mind. So in the presidential news,
yes,
boy, I think all three of us should run because pretty much everybody else is, right?
No kidding.
So Mike Huckabee. Is he announced today or is he announcing tomorrow? I can't recall which.
I think he actually announced today.
Okay, so two others announced yesterday, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
But Huckabee has joined as a presidential hopeful with a populist theme, which is opposition to trade deals that drive wages lower than the Dead Sea, and his quotes, lower than the Dead Sea part.
Yep.
Pledging to fight any cuts to Social Security benefits. That'd be pretty much seal the fate of anybody that would be running for president, in my opinion.
Yep.
And promising to eliminate the United States Department of Education to restore local controls of schools. Well, that ought to get kind of a little golf clap from some of us as a step in the right direction.
Yeah, right? It's better.
No nukes for Iran, which... Yeah, okay. And then yesterday, I was mentioning the Carly Fiorina, former CEO of HP, threw her perennial hat in the ring. And also Dr. Ben Carson has joined the field for the Republicans.
Yes.
And we've actually done, Tom, did we do one or two shows touting his speech? Wasn't it in front of Obama?
Yes. Yeah, he was
in our archives, which is a pretty darn interesting speech.
Yeah.
And actually came up in some of the news blurbs that I heard that kind of really put him on the map, is his courage to step up and criticize Obamacare right in front of the president.
Yeah, I think so. And I think we did a bunch of audio cuts from that, at least on one of the shows.
Pretty interesting. He's a pretty interesting guy.
Yep.
And then Bernie Sanders, self-described as a socialist. I have never heard of the media calling him that. Only independent Democrat independent Democrat or independent. That's kind of curious, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you follow that, Tim. It just seems funny that the guy comes out himself and says, I'm a socialist, but I've never heard the media say, Bernie Sanders, socialist from Vermont.
You know what? It's a good point. I don't know that I have ever heard the media. Of course, in 2015, the media could be somebody's website versus ABC, the networks. Are we talking about the networks only? But I can't think of an instance where someone from the network media, anyways, labeled him as a socialist.
Yeah, I just think that's curious. It's like, well, when the guy says, "Hey, I'm a socialist," why can't they go, "Oh, yeah, it's Bernie Sanders, the socialist guy from Vermont"? It just seems funny that he can't. What's so bad about that? He uses the term himself. So
they just don't seem to care, do they?
I don't know what it is. It's just interesting. I think I sent both you guys. I'm going a little off topic, but I sent you the link to that YouTube on World War II and Adolf Hitler. Did you guys see that? I sent you the link. No, on Facebook.
I did not.
I got it to you on Facebook. That's a crazy documentary, and there's it's a 6-hour deal, so you gotta really have some stick to it. I'm almost through it, but I'm going to watch it again, of course, because I'm just kind of a nut for that stuff. I find that stuff so interesting. And this one, instead of telling the whole deal, it just has a take. This is my little remote connection to the story we just did. I would say it's a documentary, but it does not have what I think is the traditional American propaganda slant to the whole situation. I think it's very interesting. Maybe that's the most interesting part of the whole deal. But of course, the history, relearning some of the history and a lot of it's new to me, I think is very interesting. But anyway, it's just interesting how the media, how information is brought to you, and then what your concept of what history is. And once I watch this, I'm starting to think, yeah, why was I so sold with the one version that I heard? And I'm not saying the version that I heard in public school is wrong, but I'm also can't say that this is wrong. Hey, I don't know. I don't have any direct experience. I mean, how does this all boil down? One historian says, no, I got it here in my book. This is the way it was. Well, what about when the next historian says, no, I got it this way. You got it wrong. Well, now what do we do? And anyway, I just think that the media part of it is kind of interesting, how you get your information and what you really, I mean, for me, it was set in my head as to what the World War II history was and how it all played out with Hitler, etc. And this is a different take on it. So if you have interest there, you might really be interested because it's a different take. So with that, sorry, I got to hand it over to Tim. It's actually the Tim show tonight. So
let's remind everybody that you're listening to the Annoying Peasant Radio Show, and thank you for joining us. And with that, we're going to talk about organs.
Yes, and should you be able to sell them or not? So here we go. Go ahead, Tim.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
So, as Brad had mentioned and Tom had mentioned at the beginning of the show, we talk a lot about on this show the topic of self-ownership, and basically it's a really simple concept. But in a nutshell, it comes down to, do you, as an individual, have the right to decide, make decisions regarding your body? Or is there someone else, a group of people that have moral authority that supersedes your right to your body? And that really is what self-ownership comes down to. And we've made the case that absolutely individual people we all have self-ownership rights to our bodies. That means that the government, local police, the village mob, the church, and for that matter, even the United Nations Security Council, none of these parties or people have rights over our bodies that supersede our own rights. We, as individuals, have the moral right to choose what we put in our body, what we take out, how we adorn our body and how we display them. We've also talked a lot on this show about what are the implications of self-ownership. So, I mean, what does it actually mean? How does that play out? And what that means is that when you have self-ownership rights, you have the moral right to choose to make both good and bad choices when it comes to your body. But with that right, we also have responsibility for the outcomes of our choices. And it seems pretty straightforward, but let me lay it out here again. Most people will agree that if you eat a sensible diet or if you exercise, that these are things that are good for your body, that these will keep you healthy. But in a free society, in a truly free society, we can choose to neglect exercise. We can become couch potatoes and just sit on the couch and watch TV all day if we want. We can have really bad, poor diets. I mean, you can live off of ice cream or, the dollar menu at Wendy's. Those are all extremes, but at the same time, you can also choose to, exercise 10 hours a day and eat nothing but salad and raw vegetable. Again, these are the extremes, but this is what, if you're talking about self-ownership, these are all of, particularly about your body, self-ownership of your body. These are all of this is the gambit of things that could come about when you have the right to choose and make choices that impact your body.
Even this, though, Tim, for some is a slippery slope, I
Absolutely.
think. The status,
absolutely.
Hey, we shouldn't be able to sell, I can't remember what it was, a 16-ounce soda or a 32-ounce soda or whatever it was in New York, right? Was it Bloomberg there at the time, or is this de Blasio?
Yep.
It was Bloomberg?
Yes.
Right? So people are, when I say people, I don't really know what I mean there. I think it's a relatively small percentage. I don't know how many. I'd call them busybodies. Maybe I should call them busybodies rather than people. But right, they're already in on that, and I think they're negating or neglecting the idea of self-ownership right in there, and say, and I know they're part of the reasoning is essentially is socialized medical care. Well, wait a minute, if you can drink 42 sodas in a day, you're going to present a higher health risk, and I got to pay for it.
Right. Well, with the case, the case in New York in the extra large, super double, big gulps, being taken off the table in New York. The case there, the most prevalent argument there, you touched on it exactly, was that society, and we can quote unquote society, right? If society has to bear the responsibility of your choices to live on Dr. Pepper night and day and drink just gallons of Dr. Pepper night and day, and you get diabetes or you get liver disease or you become morbidly obese. If society has to bear the cost associated with wheeling you to the emergency room or taking, or paying your diabetes medicine through, Medicare or Medicaid, then that's usually the argument you hear. You'll hear well, society ultimately has to pay for your bad choices. And if that's the case, then yeah, I would agree with you. I would agree with you that if society has to bear those costs, then yeah, society should be able to influence your choices. My argument, and I think the argument we make on this show, is society shouldn't have to bear those costs.
Right.
End of story.
Exactly.
If society doesn't bear those costs, if you bear the responsibility for your choices, then I get to make the choices for myself.
Yes.
That's the simple solution to the problem.
Yeah, it's a problem of socialism. It's not a problem of freedom.
Exactly.
That's how that's the short version. But yeah, I'm amazed at how many people are, I don't know if ill-informed, confused. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but you see this argument come up and I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Right.
And there's enforcement and all this other crap. But I don't want to get you too sidetracked. But I just wanted to point out some people aren't even there, which I would say is very foundational and you laid out very well. But how people can argue with you in principle, I say they can't. But, there's a lot of people smarter in the world than me, and maybe they can't. I don't see it.
Well, and it's a it's a house of cards, right? So if you're building this house of cards on a shaky foundation, and your foundation is, well, society has to bear these costs, so thus we get to choose for you, then I take away the foundation. I would just say, absolutely right. So let's undo that. Let's take away society bearing the cost and give self-ownership back to individual people, and give them the power to choose, and let them bear the responsibility and the the choices that you make. Let individuals take ownership of all of that.
Absolutely. And I think when most people hear you say take responsibility for it, they also get to take responsibility for the upside. If I'm the guy eating the salad and the vegetables and all the good stuff, good for me. Hey, I have reduced healthcare costs because I don't have the burden of paying part of Tim's and Brad's. I only have to pay mine in a free society. And hey, I would think I could cut my healthcare costs tremendously if I did that. But again, so there's a potential huge upside as well as having on the downside if I don't take care of myself.
And here's another interesting way to look at this, though, right? So I think most dietitians and doctors and whatnot will tell you that when it comes to our bodies are actually really, really intricately, and they're fine-tuned machines, and they can take a lot. And so moderation, most dietitians will tell you that moderation goes a long way. And so, people, dietitians and doctors will tell you, like, yeah, I mean, if you have a burger, every once in a while, or if you have like a dessert here and there, it's not going to be horribly detrimental to your health in the long run, right? It's when you take those things and you say, I'm going to live off of hamburgers night and day, well, then you're probably going to have some serious health consequences. And for that reason, when we're talking about self-ownership, our right to choose, the concept and the right to have free will and ownership, it has to be separate from whether you're going to make good or bad choices. And so put it another way, the defense of our right to choose, the defense of self-ownership, has to be agnostic to the choices that are available to us, to the choices that we will ultimately make, because it makes absolutely no sense to say that you can have the freedom to choose as long as you're only going to make good choices.
Yes.
But ultimately, if you try and pin people down on limiting choices, they'll tell you that, yeah, I'm okay with you making good choices and freedom and all, but I don't want you to make these bad choices, which means basically you're free to choose as long as you only make good choices.
Absolutely.
Which is not freedom at all.
Exactly.
So for that reason, and for the rest of the conversation today, I want to try and frame something a little bit differently when we talk about good and bad. So sometimes when I talk to people about things that are good or bad, they start to think that I'm talking about moral relativism, and I don't want to go down too far this route, but moral relativism, most people will say that there are some things that are absolute good and bad, and there are other things that kind of change with the times. I'm not talking about moral absolutes or relativism. That's not what I'm talking about here when we talk about good or bad. I'm not trying to say that in some cases murdering someone in cold blood is good and other times it's not. That's not where I'm going. That's a totally different topic. So for that reason, I think for today anyways, when we talk about good or bad or good choices or bad choices, it's helpful to frame them in making choices that make us better off or worse off, and not absolutely good or bad. And what's important about making that distinction is when we as individuals make choices that make us better off or worse off, we are the only ones that are in a position to make those determinations, because no one else out there can possibly know all of the things that will make everyone better off or all of the things that will make everyone worse off. There are so many factors in every decision that we make every day that will influence the outcome, whether that actually makes us better off or worse off. And so for that reason, we, Tom, Brad, Tanya, and we, then anyone that stands for self-ownership and for liberty, the basis for that is simply there is no one other than me that could possibly know all of the things and the factors and the things that I've got to weigh out and make a judgment on, based on, to say, if I do this, this will make me better off. If I do this, this will make me worse off. This should be common sense. If you spell it out, it should be common sense. But the fact is that the statist mentality, those that push for stronger regulation, limiting choices, and so forth, their basis, their shaky foundation, their house of cards that we've talked about, they will try to argue that there actually is a right way and a wrong way when it comes to our bodies. And that's where the lines get blurred, because they equate good and bad with better off, worse off. They blur the two together, and it's like a smoke and mirrors kind of thing that they try and pull on you. And so the statists will argue that there are things that are universally good, universally bad. And for that reason, the state or any other, power that be, entity that has power of enforcement tries to prevent or restrict people from making bad choices. And this is why you have things like the war on drugs. This is why you have this is why you can't get certain medications without going and seeing a board-certified medical doctor to write you a permission slip to go to another certified pharmacist to purchase certain medications. This is why you have age restrictions on purchasing alcohol or tobacco. These are the things that are the outcome of that kind of thinking and that system of control.
The nanny state.
The nanny state. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So most people, interestingly, and I shouldn't say most. I haven't done any kind of survey or anything, but I think a popular response when you talk about things like the nanny state and if you try and criticize the nanny state or controls that are put on us,
right?
There's a couple popular responses that you'll get back from people, and here they are. One is that these controls, these limitations on choice are necessary for society to function. They're absolutely necessary. Without them, society would just implode on itself. I mean, it would be Lord of the Flies. I mean, it would just be, it would just be utter chaos.
Yes.
Right. That's one. The second is that when you boil it down, people don't trust people to make good decisions. And they just think that for everyone else, and they usually don't talk about themselves. They're talking like hypothetically about just people. And it's basically anyone other than themselves.
Yes.
People out there, if there's a bad choice option out there, if there's even the existence of that choice, there's this mentality that ultimately people will just migrate to the worst possible choices out there. They will always go to the bad. They will always make bad choices if that option is left open to them.
Right.
And it's nonsense, actually. It's first of all, it's not based in any kind of reality because, I'll take, for example, alcohol, right? So alcohol is legal, but I don't go out and get drunk 24 hours a day, 7 days a week just because it's there. I just don't do it. And there are reasons for that because, one, I couldn't function in society, and two, I don't particularly like to drink. But I mean, there's alcohol readily available. Yes, there are people that drink. Yes, there are people that abuse alcohol. But society as a whole doesn't rush to always get drunk just because it's out there.
Right.
And so this mentality that people can't be trusted, that the nannies have to, kind of curtail our available choices, is utter nonsense in my view.
Tanya pointed out, actually kind of a funny one. Like you said, I agree with you. Those two popular, things that you point out, that we just don't trust other people to make good decisions or the proper decision for themselves. But Tanya says, yeah, but they trust politicians instead.
Right.
And we've talked before on this show that probably the worst of the worst go into politics because they want to control and use that authority. But you trust that guy, but you wouldn't trust the other guy who's got control over his own destiny, or he should decide for himself what he should do with his body or what to put in it or take out of it.
Yeah. Oh, we've talked about that on the show so many times, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's worth saying again that it's the ultimate irony that people have this perception that there are people that can't be trusted, or people will always make bad decisions, or that we need to be controlled, our choices need to be limited, and the way that we're going to do that is we're going to have people just like us to make those decisions for us.
I've had that discussion with a friend saying you can't leave that up to the free market. You can't, people can't do that.
Right.
I'm like, well, what are you going to have, a council? Isn't that people?
Isn't that people? Exactly.
How do you not leave it up to people? Maybe you got to use artificial intelligence, and you got to let the computer tell you.
Well, Milton Friedman, which I'm a fan of, and I quote often. But Milton Friedman has said, before, like, who are these angels, and like these mystical people that and where will we find them that are somehow above all of the temptations and all of the struggles that ordinary human beings have to wrestle with? But they're going to be the angels that are going to lead and run society for us. Where do we find these people?
Right. And because they win a popularity contest means apparently they have that virtue or better knowledge than anyone else.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, I just think, I hope people listening to the show will think about these, because, we chuckle, but I think this is true. The absurdity of the situation, I think, is at hand, and I think more people should stop and think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's one of the really big keys of discovering about your own liberty, your own freedom, is the first step is to believe that you have a choice.
Yeah.
That you don't have it now, and recognize that you don't have it now.
Right.
This is a perfect case in point that so many people are inertly trusting of the government.
Because they've been told.
Yes.
They've been told and they've been schooled and taught that you can't make those decisions.
Yes.
So we are basically here trying to get people unlearned. We're trying to retrain and recondition people from the years of kind of being beaten down by a state-run educational system that tells them that, hey, you're not capable of doing this on you. This is why you need government to handle this for you. We're trying to get people to unlearn that here.
Yes. And it's a tall order.
As a first step to recognize that is exactly the case, Tim.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Sorry, I derailed you. Keep going, man.
Not at all. Not at all. I love it. But here's what the thing, and here's where we're going to get to this topic tonight is. There are times where we have discussions, and some of it can be somewhat theoretical, and we don't see evidence of this or that, and that's where all the critics will come and say, well, show me an example where this works, show me an example of where that works. And so a lot of times we have to say, well, we just trust that people, if they're free, that they'll make good choices, and the outcome will be just because it's based on individuals making free will choices. And so sometimes we have these discussions which are not easy to kind of point to and say, here is the evidence that free will and free choice is better, and that the powers that are controlling us are actually making us worse off. This topic tonight, I can tell you emphatically, there are times where the state's controls on us not only limit our choices, but I can point to it and show you exactly that because of their controls, we are worse off. The state is actually causing us harm. And this is one of the topics that we're going to talk about tonight. And this is an example that we're going to talk about tonight. That this is not, we're no longer talking about just some theoretical, textbook discussion, coffeehouse discussion. This is real life that's happening. And I can point to evidence over and over again that the state is in fact causing us harm because of their controls. And that topic tonight, as we talked about already, is organ donation, or as I'll just call it, do you have the rights over your bodies? Do you actually own your own body?
Yes.
So what if I told you that we could eliminate almost overnight the the 9th leading cause of death in the United States.
That's huge.
And the number 9 leading cause of death. Not only that, but this solution, this plan, it doesn't require a single additional dollar of research or taxpayer funding. There's no need to search for a cure or to begin FDA testing. We're not talking about some radical new experimental procedure or medicine. This already exists in and has been proven over and over again to be a successful cure. Aside from saving lives, this plan would spare millions of survivors years of needless pain and suffering. And as if that isn't enough reason right there, this plan could help create jobs. It could potentially increase wealth for those that have no other options. And you could drive down the dangerous use or eliminate the illegal black market, which is thriving today, and all of the kind of pitfalls that come with having to resort to using the black market because this solution is deemed illegal by the state.
I was just going to say, I'm all in, Tim, so why aren't we doing it?
Well, let me tell you. What we're talking about is the global prohibition of selling your organs on the open market. Now, throughout this show, I plan to talk specifically about kidneys and the sale and transplants of kidneys because, as you had shared earlier, and in one of the clips that you posted on the Facebook page, kidney disease actually represents like 84% of the U.S. organ demand. So kidneys are really high on the list. So you talk about low-hanging fruit. Kidneys are probably gets the most spotlight because it's the highest demand as far as organ is concerned. But these points that we're making today, they apply to anything, any part of your body, any organ, tissue, fluids. These arguments and cases can be made both for organs that are donated from living donors, but also organs that are donated from the recently deceased, so from cadavers. Yep. So let me give you guys a little bit of background and data on kidney disease. So for those of you that don't know, when you have two kidneys and you're born, most people are born with two healthy kidneys, you can actually survive and live a normal, healthy life with just one. And the one kidney can do the function to keep your body free from toxins and reduce toxins in your blood. And so for those of you who don't know, what the kidney does, the function of the kidney in the body is to kind of clean out your blood. So it cleans out your blood of toxins, waste, excess salts. It reduces, it maintains adequate water levels in your bloodstream. And so this is what kidneys do. When your kidneys fail, so when you have kidney disease and eventually your kidneys don't work anymore, the only option outside of donation is dialysis. Now, there's a couple different flavors of dialysis, which I won't go into, but dialysis is basically it's a long and tedious process by which you're basically hooked up to a machine. The treatment can last about 4 hours, and it takes about 3 to 4 days a week sitting in a chair for 4 hours. And this machine basically like cleanses your blood. It reduces the toxins in your blood. It regulates water levels and takes out all the junk that kind of builds up in your bloodstream. Dialysis is not meant to be a long-term solution. In fact, it can't be. And the reason is dialysis, even sitting 4 hours a day, 4 days a week, only reduces and filters about 10% of the toxins in your blood.
Wow.
And so what happens to these patients that have kidney disease and are kind of, their doctor tells them they got to start a dialysis treatment, they basically die a slow, long, drawn-out death.
Yeah.
Because they know that the level of toxins in their blood just keeps building, and the dialysis just can't keep up. And so over time, their health deteriorates, they get weaker, and they basically just die a slow, long, drawn-out death. And that's all dialysis can do. It can never replace the function of a healthy kidney.
Well, you think
so these
a kidney goes 24 hours, it works, theoretically. A healthy one would be working 24 hours a day on your filtering your blood and doing all the things that Tim mentioned earlier, right? Well, versus 4 hours a day, 3 days a week, 12 hours of total filtration time. Even if that machine was as effective as a kidney, it's only 12 hours versus however many hours are in a whole week.
Right? Exactly.
It just, I can't see that. I mean, it's got to, I would, if it could even get it to perfectly clean, I don't think it could probably work as good as a kidney that's working 24 hours a day that's specifically built to do this job.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So.
And everyone that is on dialysis right now, which, by the way, every day, 400,000 Americans. So we're not even just talking about the rest of the world. I'm a lot of the data that I get here is specifically for the Americans, but 400,000 Americans every day are on kidney dialysis.
Wow.
And as you had mentioned earlier in the quote, roughly a quarter of them are actually on the organ donor waiting list. So you wonder, like, well, okay, if there's like 400,000 Americans and only about roughly 85,000 to 100,000 of them are on the organ donor list, what are those other 300,000 people that are on dialysis? What are they doing?
Right.
The fact is, if you wait too long, so if your kidneys fail and you start this process of dialysis, there comes a point where you're still living, but you have reached a point of no return where organ transplant will no longer benefit you.
Uh-huh.
So you're basically taken off the list because you've been on it too long, and organ transplant is no longer an option for you.
Your window has closed.
Your window has closed. So basically at that point, you're just waiting to die because you were on the list for so long.
Uh-huh.
Now, let's talk some numbers here. 400,000 Americans on dialysis every day. Only a quarter of them are on the donor list right now. In 2012, only 16,500 Americans received a kidney transplant. That's about 4% of the market need in America.
That's unbelievable.
And right now, the only way to get an organ is from a voluntary donor that donated their organs, either while they're still living, so they donated one of their healthy kidneys to somebody, or after someone recently died and they take the organs out with some consent and forms and stuff, the doctors are able to take out organs after someone dies and can use those to be transplanted. Only 16,500 out of 400,000 that needed them. So that's the result of being forced to take the voluntary donor route only. No compensation, no payment. That's what we get today. So the other problem here, though, is of those 16,500, so of that number that actually get organs, even then, some of them have maybe not reached that point of no return, but they've been on dialysis for so long that within the first 5 years, 30% of those people that got organs, they actually fail. And again, it's because they've waited too long and their health has deteriorated, beyond a certain point.
Right.
As you had mentioned also before, Tom, 25 people a day die in the United States waiting for a kidney.
Because of the power of the pen.
Exactly.
Right? Like you said, no new research. There's nothing that needs to be done. We don't need to invest billions of dollars. We don't need to do all this stuff. Just change the power of the pen.
Exactly.
Oh.
So here's some history on the legislation and the laws around organ donation. So in 1954, Dr. Joseph Murray successfully transplanted a kidney between a set of twins. That was the first successful transplant. The surgery was a success because, one, the donor had two healthy kidneys and could still survive on the one, right? The second reason was they were twins, so they're genetically identical. And so the recipient of the donated organ, that person's body didn't try and reject the organ. Because normally your immune system, if you put like an organ that's not from your genetic makeup into your body might attack it. Your immune system might attack it because it looks at it and says, there's something foreign that's getting introduced into our system here. And so this Dr. Murray was actually successful because the organ that was going into the recipient's body was a genetic match. Now, in the 1970s and 80s, there was a lot of research and advancements that were made in anti-rejection and immunosuppressant drugs that made it possible for people to receive and incorporate genetic material organs from someone from a different genotype. And that's what these drugs did, is it basically tricked your body into accepting organs from another person. And when that happened, when those drugs started coming onto the marketplace, as you can imagine, the demand for kidneys went through the roof because all of a sudden now it was a cure. A cure was found for kidney disease, and this is a viable option. All of a sudden, there was a huge demand in the marketplace for kidneys, and for donated kidneys.
Yep.
In 1983, Congress started holding these hearings to figure out a game plan, how to strategize. How do we address this organ shortage in the United States? And during those hearings, a guy by the name of Dr. Barry Jacobs stood up in Congress on the floor in the Congress under testimony and laid out a plan. He said it's very simple. If we pay donors for their organs, if we pay people, and this is we meaning the government, if the government actually paid out some compensation to donors, it would actually reduce the overall cost on society because you're no longer doing this long drawn out dialysis, which is very costly and expensive, and in the end, it's not a long term fix. But this was his idea. He said, pay these people X amount of dollars. In net, we're actually ahead. And oh, by the way, all these people will get healthy organs and they'll live long and fruitful lives. It's a win-win. Well, the outcry from the public and the medical community was fierce. They jumped on Dr. Jacobs, and critics left and right were accusing him of being a predator, that he was trying to exploit the poor and the desperate, and this was the worst side of capitalism and free market greed and so forth. And so because of all of that backlash, in 1984, Congress passed, as you had mentioned, Tom, the National Organ Transplant Act, which is also known as NOTA, N-O-T-A, in 1984. And as a result of this legislation, anyone trying to buy or sell organs in the United States was looking at up to $50,000 in fines and 5 years in prison. So if you were sick and you were desperate and you wanted to pay someone who's willing to donate their kidney to you for a price, and you got caught by the popo, you would be looking at 5 years in jail. Well, if you've got kidney disease and you're dying, 5 years, that's a death sentence in jail.
Absolutely.
And $50,000, maybe you have it because you were planning to buy an organ anyways, but okay, now you're sitting in jail.
Right.
So This is how Congress behaves. They say, well, we can't have that. We can't have people buying organs and selling their organs. So our solution is to fine you and to throw you in jail for doing so.
They created a perverse prohibition in a sense.
Right.
They still have this organ donor system that you're going to mention here, but it's essentially prohibition because it works so well for alcohol. So
right, exactly. So part of NOTA also, right, in 1986, NOTA also gave way to establishing the Organ Procurement and Transplantation Network, or the OPTN, which most people know as the Organ Donor List. It's the National Registry for the Organ Donor List. It's the only one that's legal. So right there's no competition even for the donor list. This has to be maintained by the government, right?
Oh.
So since that time, there have been a few laws and amendments to laws that have passed, and notably, there was the Charlie W. Norwood Living Organ Donation Act of 2007. That's kind of a mouthful, but basically all this law did in 2007 was update NOTA and some of the inner workings of it to say that there's now a written out kind of a list of succession for who has the right to decide for the recently deceased whether their organs can be donated or not. So it kind of goes down the line. If you died, who has the right to determine whether your organs can be donated for someone in need? And it goes, I don't know how the list goes, but it's something like, your spouse has first dibs, and if your spouse can't be there, then maybe it's your parents or your kids or something. And so that's the new law that was passed in 2007, and that's the only improvement, if you want to call it an improvement, in legislation from NOTA in 1984.
Wow.
Out of the 1980s, so what as the U.S. kind of led the charge here in criminalizing organ sales, the rest of the world, the World Health Organization, and the rest of kind of the world kind of followed suit. And they also, in many other countries, also started similarly legislating bans on organ sales. And this kind of came out of the 1980s. So globally, you just started to see all of these countries starting to shut the door and say, we're not going to allow you to buy organs in our country. And so, all of these countries around the world kind of followed the U.S. suit. So let's pause here for a moment and let's look at this problem as it is.
Hey,
there are millions of people.
While we're pausing, Tim, can I remind everybody that you're listening to the Annoying Peasant Radio Show? Thank you for joining us. Please check us out on Facebook. And just as a footnote, since we've been talking, I've reserved the domain name Kidneys Are Us.
I was going to say, and you're listening to the episode Organs Are For Sale.
Thanks, Brad. So here's let's lay this out again. Millions of people have either died or are currently suffering from kidney disease. Drugs, technology, the medical advancement, there are no permanent long-term substitutes to cure kidney disease, with the exception of receiving a donated kidney and transplanting that to your body. There are no other kind of long-term permanent solutions. These people that are suffering, they have today very little hope because, as the statistics I shared, of the severe shortage of legally donated organs. Only about 4% of the need is being met every year. The rest of the people are either waiting to die or have died.
Is there another place where the free market exists that the market is only helping 4% of the demand?
Yes. I can't think of any.
Right.
And I can't think of why you would want that would be a cause for celebration.
Yes. It's better than 3.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Now, when I say legally donate, I mean there's plenty of available supply in the world. So don't get me wrong. It's not that there are a shortage of supply or organs. It's that there's no motivation. There's very little motivation for people to donate organs right now. And the reality is that even with all of the increased publicity and awareness campaigns, go out and become an organ donor campaigns and so forth, still today, only a fraction of the need is actually being met through voluntary, uncompensated donations. And even if you have the desire to go and donate one of your healthy kidneys, I was surprised to find that the restrictions on your ability. So there's like this laundry list of criteria that you have to qualify to donate one of your kidneys if you're still alive. I mean, if it's different if we're talking about if you've recently deceased.
Right.
But if you're still alive and you're like, you know what, I really want to do something good for somebody, even if it's a complete stranger, and I want to donate my organs or one of my kidneys to someone in need, there's a huge list of criteria and hurdles that you have to clear to qualify to donate voluntarily. And hey, I'll just name a couple of them. For one, you have to be healthy and have health insurance. You have to be in good health and have health insurance. If you don't have health insurance right now and you want to donate a kidney, too bad. Sorry, can't take your kidney. If you have diabetes or a history of like hypertension or heart problems, if you're even slightly overweight, sorry, can't take your organ. Think about also if you want to donate your organ, what that involves. If you're living, right?
Right.
You've got to take out time from work to have major surgery done. You've got to have time to heal post-surgery. So you're probably taking time off of work. So you've got to have basically either some money saved for the expenses you're going to incur to donate because you can't get paid for it. So you're on your own to kind of, if you've got to take time off from work, I don't know how long the recuperating time is after you donate, but we're talking major surgery. I'm sure you can't walk around and you can't lift heavy things. You're probably going to be off your feet for quite some time to heal.
Right.
So even then, even if you want to give your organ to somebody, there's a pretty extensive kind of process by which we're going to even further limit the pool of people that are qualified to donate.
Bureaucratic red tape with the state, you say? It can't be so.
This is the only time. This is the only time.
Okay, all right. And then the other one I got on this is, let alone the pain and suffering that's associated with it, right? I mean, I don't know too many people who are like, hey, I got to schedule a surgery. I just get a kick out of this. I got to figure out how to have something done, right? So if you're going to donate a kidney, there's emotional and physical downside to it, besides the long-term effect, which I can't evaluate, and I can't tell you how good or bad it is, but you do have a lack of a backup in the case of a kidney going forward.
Exactly.
And what's that worth? Yeah. Right? So,
excuse me. Unfortunately, the reality is the desperate, the people, these 400,000 people that are on dialysis today, usually resort to the black market. And when I say the black market, it's basically the illegal market. It's either within the United States or going outside of the United States to places where they can illegally find places where they can get a donor organ and pay for organs illegally. By doing so, they're risking prison if it's done in the United States and a $50,000 fine. They're risking unsanitary or unsafe operating conditions because some of these places are not going to be kind of kept in tip-top shape because they're doing things illegally.
Because what's your recourse against them?
That's the other thing.
Right.
There's no recourse. You cannot pursue them in a court of law.
Right.
If they steal your money, if they do a bad job, if they botch your surgery, if they cause you harm, right? Or if they just walk away and they take your money and they don't even do anything, right? So a lot of times these people pay money up front and these people disappear with their money. So then they're just out money.
It's like going to the cops because you got a bad bag of pot. I mean, come on. The dude ripped me off.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
So this is the thing. These people that are desperately seeking organs, they've done the number crunching. They've seen the reality. They're like, I've got like a 1 in 20 chance, 1 in 25 chance that I'm going to get selected in time.
Right.
On this voluntary so they go to the black market. It's estimated that about 1,000 kidneys a year are sold illegally in the United States. We're not even talking about internationally. And funds a $1.2 billion underground illegal industry. Now, if free people in a free society have rights to self-ownership, we should be able to sell our organs to anyone that wants to purchase them, period. I can grow my hair out and I can cut it all off one day and I can go and sell it to a wig making company for some extra cash. If my hair grows fast enough and thick enough, maybe I could even make a living off of it, I mean, as long as they're willing buyers.
Sure.
But the government tells me that I don't have the right to sell my kidney or my plasma or my right leg, for that matter, to a willing cash buyer. And why is that? Why do we tolerate that? In a civilized, free society, how do we justify this intrusion of the government? When I talk to people about this topic and about the idea, just even floating the idea of selling organs on the open market, I'm not talking about like behind, under the table kind of thing, in an open market, I usually get one of three different basic responses. And I'm going to lay them out here.
People got to listen to these. These are great. These are great points here, I think. And I think if someone's listening and they object to this idea, listen to these and see if you have some or all of the same objections. But Tim's going to address them here, so this is excellent.
So here's the first. Like, this is usually the first, right? And we touched on this on the introduction of this topic. But basically, the idea is that the mere existence, even the existence of an organ marketplace may encourage someone to steal organs from another person. The fact that you can legally sell organs, people will make the argument that if that is the case, then who's to stop a doctor who's performing like an appendectomy, for instance? I mean, you're knocked out anyways, and if you're in to have your appendix removed, who's to stop an unscrupulous doctor from also, while he's in there, maybe taking a kidney from you? I mean, you wouldn't know, right? You're under anesthesia. You wake up, you've got some stitches, and you've got some pain and tenderness. How do you know? Maybe there's some shady doctors out there that'll start stealing your kidneys if there's an open market. Someone might, if you're walking down the street, rather than hold you up and rob you of your wallet, maybe people start killing you for your organs. Yep. I mean, and what will happen then? So that's basically the first objection that I usually get. The second that I hear a lot is for the poor as donors, right? The poor might not think these things through. They might not think through the implications of selling their organs. They may jump too quickly at the chance to sell an organ out of desperation because they need the cash. But basically, the objection is that, the more affluent might do the same, but it really would probably focus in on the poor especially, right? So They will just too quickly, without thinking things through, sell off their organs, and so that's the second objection. The third is, again, with the poor, this time as their recipients, the poor might not be able to afford to pay for organs that are on sale, that are for sale. And so for this reason, the argument is made that if you have an open market for organs, the poor would suffer disproportionately. So like if you're wealthy, sure, you can go and buy organs all day because you've got the money, but the poor, they're going to be more disadvantaged here. And so the only fair and equitable way to distribute organs is through a voluntary donation list, which the government will run and make sure that, whoever comes first or whoever's got the greatest need is going to get the organ regardless of their income or social status. So those are basically the three main objections or flavors of objections that I usually come across when I talk about this topic. So let's unpack a couple of these one at a time, right?
Yep.
So the idea that the existence of a marketplace might actually encourage theft or being killed for your organs, this one to me is a bit of a head scratcher. I don't even sometimes I don't know what to say. I just kind of sit there and look and stare and think, did you actually just say that? So, because here's the thing. Since when do we prohibit the sale of something because it could? There's the potential that the market itself will cause someone to steal or to kill for those things. If we applied that same logic to cell phones, for instance, right? If the existence of a cell phone market might encourage thieves to rob you or kill you to take your phone from you and make a quick buck, do we make the cell phone market illegal? Do we prohibit the sale of cell phones for our own protection? I mean, do we do that with diamonds or with jewelry or with expensive cars? So this argument to me is utter nonsense. Of course it's wrong to steal. Of course it's wrong to kill people. Of course it's wrong to take people's organs or their property against their will or without their knowledge. That's a no-brainer. I mean, the existence of a market does not undo your rights to your. If anything, it supports your right to your property. But I don't see how the creation of a marketplace actually somehow removes your protections of your property and your body.
Yeah, those are great examples with the same logic, right? To contradict the first objection that we're unpacking here is that people think, well, people might be encouraged to steal your kidneys as you're walking down the street. I see they're going to be nice criminals that get me. They're going to kidnap me, see, and then they'll cut me open, do all the proper medical procedures, take my kidney out. Now I'm just going to wake up, I'll be sore, and I got a scar, right? But that's the thing people think of. Well, they're people may be enticed to do such a thing. But again, that same logic, does it apply to cell phones, luxury automobiles, or all the things that you listed? Think about that. And if someone would be enticed by doing that, they're still guilty of a crime.
Right.
And
I mean, that's the thing is, of course those things are wrong, and of course we would punish people that do those things. But the free market is not what's at fault here.
Right.
It is not the free market. It's, hey, you shouldn't steal. You shouldn't kill.
It's criminals.
It's criminal, right? The criminals, but this shouldn't prevent us from having a free market because criminals may come into the marketplace.
It's really the same thing. It's violation of property rights. It'd be a violation of my property right to not be able to sell it, but it's a violation of my property right for somebody to come in and steal my kidney.
It absolutely is.
Right? It's the same. You can't. The point is, can you have it sometimes but not other times? No. Right? It's a universal law, so it applies all times, all places. You own yourself. But right. So on to the second objection. So the objection here that the poor might impulsively sell their organs without thinking it through. And along this same vein, you could make the argument that maybe sellers of organs maybe they're not given all of the right information. Maybe they don't get full disclosure of the risks involved in donating their organs. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're not thinking. Maybe they're like emotionally distraught or something, or stressed, and they kind of rush to a decision to sell their organs. And my response to that is, it can be basically summed up to what we talked about earlier, is that the responsibilities of self-ownership means that you basically, no one else but you can be the judge of whether you have properly done the research, weighed the balance of the risk and the reward, or the risk and the return, or what the choice that you're about to make. No one can basically take that responsibility from you. That should be yours in everything, but especially when it comes to organ donation. Now, will there be resources? Absolutely. If there's a free market, I guarantee you there will be advocates that will be trying to convince you not to sell your organs, even if you have the legal right to do so. Sure.
There will be groups that will pop up left and right and say, you know what? Think it through. This might happen to you. Here are the risks. You might have these long-term side effects. So there will be information in the marketplace. Guarantee it. But ultimately, I want to tell you, this again goes back to, with self-ownership, you bear the responsibility ultimately for the choices that you make and the risks that you take when it comes to your organs. But the cookie-cutter approach that the government takes of basically universally prohibiting the sale of organs, what this comes down to is basically we're being told that no one, not just the poor, not just the uninformed, but no one owns their body outright because of the limits that are placed on us as far as the decisions that we can make for our body. These restrictions don't care if you have full disclosure of the risk or not. There is no wiggle room for you to decide if you can live on one healthy kidney in exchange for maybe potentially life-changing compensation. You're not able to make that decision, we're being told. You don't have the ability to decide for yourself what to do with your body, is the bottom line.
Another interesting thing is a doctor engaging in the procedure would have the incentive to disclose all the risks, etc., because he wants to protect himself, right? Mm-hmm. The doctor doesn't want to say, hey, Tim, you're going to donate your kidney here. There's absolutely no chance of anything going wrong. If I say that to you as a doctor and something goes wrong, I'm going to get hammered big time in the court of law.
Yeah.
right? Because you gave me a guarantee nothing was going to go wrong. I mean, it's different if I say, hey, Tim, there's some inherent risks here. You got to understand what they are. And if one of those goes wrong, you know, say, hey, Tim, did you understand that was a risk? Yes, I did. I signed the document right there. That's my name on the bottom. Well, then you knowingly took the risk. So other players have incentive to add to your full disclosure and help you make an informed decision. And that doesn't mean every single person would. I'm just saying it would likely be very available.
Right. And look, I'm not in favor of this, but like in some places in the country, right, you've got to wait 10 days before you can buy a gun.
Right.
Right. I mean, you gotta basically fill out some paperwork, and then they do some background checks, and and you've got to wait. I mean, there's a forced waiting period. I'm not in favor at all of the government deciding whether you should be able to sell your organs or not if it becomes legal. But we could institute for the people that are not convinced a 3-day or a week-long waiting period. Hey, you say you want to donate, fine. You've got to think about it for a week, and then we'll go through with the procedure. Anything. But ultimately what this objection comes down to, again, is the belief that people are not able to think and make decisions for themselves.
So politicians are the skilled craftsmen who can do it.
So we have to allow the state to do our thinking for us.
Yes.
The third objection, right? The third objection here, the idea that the poor would not be able to afford to pay for organs if you could sell them on the open market. To me, this communicates a fundamental flaw in understanding basic economics.
There you go.
But even aside from that, so the economics aside, right? There's nothing about an open marketplace where you can sell and buy organs that would necessarily remove the option for voluntary donations to also continue to exist. In other words, we can keep the exact same system we have right now of voluntary organ donations and a national registry maintained and run by the OPTN network. That can still continue to exist.
Wait a minute.
People can still, through altruistic motives only, freely donate their organs and also have an open market for people to buy and sell organs. They can completely exist at the same time.
Wait a minute, Tim. Sounds a little like if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. No,
all I'm saying is it's not a left or right. It's not a one or the other.
Yes.
You can have both.
Sure.
Just because of if there exists an open market, that doesn't mean that people will stop donating their organs voluntarily and for free.
Just because you can sell your kidney doesn't mean you can't give it away.
Yeah, you can sell it for $1.
Right.
If you really want to be altruistic and you want to participate in the open market, sell your organ for $1. You can do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that objection, before we get into the economics of it, I'll just say right out front, you can continue to have the voluntary network and still have an open market. But let's look at the open market and what that does to prices and this perceived objection that the poor won't be able to pay for for organs when you start trading and selling them on an open market. So if overnight the restrictions on organ sales were removed, if there were no longer any restrictions globally on the sale of organs, immediately what you would see is people that are on the waiting list, people that are doing the dialysis death march right now, would start hitting the internet, their phones, their contacts, their family, their friends, their neighbors, and you would start to see immediately overnight people asking and bidding on organs. You would see ads pop up that say, sell me your kidney for $100,000 cash. Sell me your bone marrow for $50,000. I am willing to mortgage my house, liquidate my 401k, pay you an annual stipend for as long as I live if you sell me your liver, of your recently deceased loved one.
Can you say eBay?
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's something like that, right? But overnight, you would see a flood of people come to, as long as now it's legal. Now you can do this. the organ recipients, the people that need the organs, would immediately come out and start hitting the marketplace, placing bids out there for organs.
Sure.
And the prices that they'd be willing to pay, you will see, will start to go up and up and up. So someone might come out with a $5,000 bid. The next person is $50,000. Next up, $100,000. And I'm just throwing out numbers here, right? When this happens, you will immediately then see the next step will be donors will flood the marketplace. Overnight, donors will start to come to the market and say, $100,000 for a kidney? Sold. I'll sell you my kidney.
By the way,
and they will.
The poor may benefit because some of those donors, or actually not sellers, may be poor. So now they're getting $100,000, just using some of the numbers you threw out, for a kidney. So when people say, well, this could really hurt the poor, it could also very much benefit the poor.
Right.
But
exactly. Yeah. And I'll touch on that in a second.
Oh, sorry.
But you're right that immediately what would happen is you'd have potential donors come to the marketplace and start posting or offering their organs to the highest bidder, right?
Sure.
So what happens then is initially you'll probably see a lot of volatility in the prices that are being quoted, and which should be the case in a free market where there's no one setting a price for all. It's basically an exchange, right? So you'll have buyers, potential buyers, people that need organs out there bidding for them, and they'll be posting somewhere, their offered price to pay. And then you'll also have sellers that are coming in. They say, well, I'll only sell at this price. And it's only when the two parties agree on the prices and the terms of the exchange that a trade or an exchange will actually take place. One day, on the first day, for example, you might see someone sell a kidney for $500,000. The next day, it might be $50,000. And you'll just see these wide swings in price action as buyers and sellers kind of come to the marketplace and enter into the marketplace, and they communicate their demand and available supply. At some point, and this is the beauty of the market, at some point, you will actually have too much supply. There will actually be a surplus of potential donors and not enough need or demand in the marketplace. In other words, no one that wants an organ donated would be waiting on a list anymore.
I think that's the reverse of what we have now.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Instead of a waiting list for people that are waiting to get organs and hoping and praying that someone will altruistically donate their organ to save their life, instead what you'll see is a national or a local, whatever, waiting list of donors that are waiting to sell, that want to sell. When this happens, when you have too much supply and not enough demand, prices will actually start to drive down. Prices will start to go down because now sellers are the ones that are driving the prices, trying to compete to make a trade in the marketplace. And the buyers are basically sitting back and letting the sellers compete with each other for their demand. And when this happens, you will start to see prices get lower and lower and lower and become more affordable for your lower income or poor potential buyers. That's how the market works. And so, again, I want to reiterate this point. Even if the price, and again, hypothetical numbers here. Let's say the price actually came down to like $5,000 for a kidney, right? And you'd say, well, the poor still can't afford $5,000 for a kidney. Again, you still have that free donor exchange run by the OPTN. It's still there. You can still put your name on that list. The list is probably going to be a lot shorter now. With an open market, it's probably going to go down from 100,000 to maybe a couple thousand. So maybe your chances improve by sitting on that list.
But even the poor have the other option of, okay, I can't afford to buy that kidney even at $5,000, but I might have a cousin who would be willing to sell his for $5,000. That's how my family gets the $5,000, because assuming his kidney's not compatible with mine, right? And then I could take the $5,000 and go on the open market and try to buy a kidney.
Exactly.
In other words, so the poor still have the asset, right? It's not that they don't have any assets. If kidneys become real assets, they have them, and they get richer because they now have assets that weren't sellable before.
Right. And that's exactly the point. So as it relates to the poor, Tom, think about the poor. If you are someone that's in financial ruin, if you don't have any marketable skills, maybe you do, but maybe you're taking care of sick or needy family members, or maybe your business burned down or something, right? But there's something that took place in your life that you now have a need for a source of income. Yep. The open market organ, or the open organ market, creates an option for you that doesn't exist today. It's an opportunity for you to choose with your free will whether you want to sell your organs to support your family, to support your loved ones, or whatever it is. But that's just all that represents is it's an option that doesn't exist today. It's another choice made available to those that have limited choices.
Yes, and if you find this repulsive or wrong or whatever your criticism is, then don't sell your organ. Don't engage in buying an organ. Right?
Exactly.
We're just saying you shouldn't be able to stop someone else from doing it just because I don't like it.
Yep. Exactly.
I would go so far as to say that what you might think today, how you might feel today when you don't have the need, could very quickly change when you have the need.
Yes.
Well, and what's really aggravating to me, the people that stand for supporting NOTA and criminalizing selling your organs voluntarily, right? I don't know if they've ever sat with anyone that's suffered from kidney disease or are in need of an organ, and actually looked at them and seen the look on their face, knowing that their chances of getting an organ are so small that it's really hard for them to keep positive, to stay positive, and to hold out hope for a donor to come by and give them an organ. I don't know if they've ever done that, but if that were your loved one, if that was your mom or your dad or your son or daughter, I mean, what wouldn't you do to secure an organ to extend their life or to save their life? I mean, would you sell your house? Would you sell your car? Would you take a second job? Or, I mean, whatever. If that meant the opportunity to save a loved one's life, who are we that we are sitting on our high horse to say, we're not going to allow you to make that decision for your loved one?
Well,
I mean, that to me, that is arrogant beyond belief.
Yes.
And you're condemning these people to a short remaining lifetime of suffering and eventual death.
And if you won a popularity contest and have a D or an R after your name, you have the arrogance to do it.
Right. Yeah. So, this is the state of the organ kind of non-market, if you will, in America today. And as I mentioned earlier when I started, I know that there are skeptics out there that will say, well, whenever you talk about freedom or liberty or things like this, it sounds great in theory, but this idea that you have this open market for organ transactions, it'll never work in the real place. And I can hear the critics already out there kind of saying these things. And I submit to you, the listeners out there, that it already has worked. It exists. There's over 30 years of evidence that this exists, because there is a place on the planet where this has been taking place for, like I said, almost 30 years. And that place is, of all places in the world, Iran. In Iran, it is legal to sell and buy organs, kidneys, in the market, in the open market. Now, there's a fascinating book that I picked up last week. The author's name is Sigrid Frey Revere. Sigrid Frey Revere. She's a doctor and she's a PhD, and she went to Iran and had to see this kind of market for organ transactions for herself. So she had heard about it. She wanted to see it in person. So she went. She wrote a fascinating book. It's called The Kidney Sellers: A Journey of Discovery in Iran. I would highly recommend it. I'm sure we're going to repost the link again on the Annoying Peasant Radio show on Facebook. But I picked up this book, and I'm about halfway through it, but it is just a great, great book. Lots of great material. In fact, a lot of the information and the statistics that I'm sharing come from that book. But anyways, Dr. Frey-Revere went to Iran and wrote this book from witnessing this marketplace in Iran. And some of the background that she shares here is in the 1960s and 70s, right, before the Islamic Revolution, Iran was actually part of the Eurotransplant network, kind of like the donor network that we have here in America. And in the 70s, Iran, any Iranians that needed organs would travel to Europe and would either have the surgery done in Europe, or cadaver organs would be sent from Europe into Iran. And so there was this exchange where they were part of this network and they could participate in voluntary organ donations. After the Islamic Revolution, though, Iran, both by choice but also by economic sanction, was cut off from the rest of the world. And so the Iranian government had to come up with a solution for the growing number of organ needs in their country, because especially for kidneys in their country, because, again, they're cut off from the rest of the world. They can no longer participate in the Eurotransplant network. So as a result, the Iranian government came up with this idea of paying people who were willing to voluntarily sell their kidneys for those in need within the country. And this kind of experiment started, in the late 70s, early 80s, and is still going on today. And there have been some kind of it was a trial by fire kind of an experiment, and the end result is, it still works today. It still is in place. In fact, the Iranian government even participates in providing some compensation to donors. So some of the money that goes to donors actually comes from the government themselves. The government actually is funding some of the donations directly to the donors. Now, as far as how much they're getting, in 2009, the average compensation, cash compensation, so we're not talking about the benefits like healthcare services and things like that, but just the cash compensation alone. In 2009, the average compensation in cash to a donor was about $5,000. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot of money, but keep in mind, the average salary in Iran is about $3,000 a year. So you're talking about a year and 2/3, almost 2 years worth of salary for donating your organ for your average Iranian.
Yes.
So what happened? So what are the results? What's brass tacks? What happened? Over the last 25, 30 years with this marketplace in existence in Iran, the result is that for the last decade, at least over the last 10 years, there has not been a single case of kidney shortage in Iran. They actually have, as I had described, an organ donor waiting list where the list is comprised of potential donors waiting to sell their organs to anyone that needs it. There has not been a single person on the waiting list hoping for a kidney to be donated. Now, the process itself takes some time, so I don't want to mislead anybody to think that, you get kidney disease and in Iran, the next day, your kidney is found and you have surgery and you're boom, bam, boom, you're done. It takes some time, so there's some kind of it's a government program, so there's some it takes some time to go from beginning to end. But the point here is, and by all means, if you read the book, the system in Iran is not perfect. There are certainly things that they can do to improve. I personally have some opinions about how much government involvement in this marketplace. I would like to see less government involved in this market, but it is mostly facilitated by the Iranian government. So the system itself is not perfect in Iran. But there is no denying the truth that this free market of voluntary sellers selling to voluntary buyers of organs has succeeded in eliminating a wait for organs. Now, to me, like I said at the beginning when I started, you can argue all you want about some hypothetical cases of liberty where free will is superior to control or to coercion. This right here, this is living proof that the free market can and has met the needs of the sick and the dying and solved the solution of people dying and suffering needlessly, and has done it through voluntary participation. Nobody is forcing you to give up your kidneys or taking kidneys from you. I mean, it happens, but this is not what is the program here. The program is to have voluntary sellers and voluntary buyers participating in this market. The prices can be negotiated between the buyers and the sellers. They can be in Iran. It's more of like a state established pricing system. But again, the case can be made, I think, that even if you didn't have a state set pricing system, that the free market ultimately will bring buyers and sellers together, and through voluntary cooperation and exchange will meet the demands of the marketplace naturally. And again, to me, this is a no-brainer. This is something that someday, hopefully very, very soon, we're going to look back in this and say, Iran had this right. They've had it right for like 30 years. What took the rest of the civilized world so long to learn from Iran's leadership in free markets?
Yeah. Embarrassing.
It is embarrassing.
It's embarrassing.
And it's a tragedy.
Yes.
That's what I mean. It angers me because it is a tragedy, because the government is needlessly causing pain and suffering and death.
Yes.
Every single day.
They're essentially sentencing certain individuals to death. Tim did a fantastic job of putting this all together. Just unbelievable. I just want to add like 2 sentences from a Walter Williams article. He says, and this is the notion that we're on this voluntary system and all this stuff that's going on now, right? And he's quoting here about this rhetoric that organ transplantation is built upon altruism and public trust, which public trust scares me. I don't know what that is. But he says, it's noteworthy that everyone involved in the organ transplant business is compensated. That includes hospitals, surgeons, nurses, and organ procurement workers. Depending on the organ transplanted, the charges range from a low of 260 G's for a kidney to about $1 million for a heart or intestines. But of course, not the donor. The donor doesn't get a penny out of this.
Right. Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
It's crazy what goes on, and I was being a bit facetious when I was embarrassing, because obviously the emotional embarrassment is nothing compared to the loss of life that we spoke of earlier. But again, I think you did a wonderful job there, Tim, on pointing out that people say, well, it actually can't work in practice, though. And here you're showing an example, maybe not the perfect example, but something that's obviously there's no imbalance there in supply and demand, where we clearly have one here.
In fact, as you had pointed out, Tom, it's gone the other way.
Yeah.
If there is an imbalance, the imbalance is that we have more organs that are available than are needed. And that's a great place to be.
Yes.
As a society.
Oh.
So one quick kind of thing here. So for the listeners out there, I mean, and they're wondering, like, okay, this sounds great. What do I do? What can I do? Sitting here, I'm not in Iran, but what can I do to change things, or what can I do? For one, as much as I hate the voluntary organ network that is run by the government, until we change the laws to legalize the sale and exchange for compensation, organs and tissues. I would encourage everyone out there to become an organ donor. Let your loved ones know that you want to be one, so that if something were to happen to you tragically someday, that your organs and your tissues and your your fluids and your blood and so forth can benefit somebody else, because the need is very, very great out there. Until we free up the market, it's absolutely critical that people that are able to and willing to donate their organs do so. So sign up to become an organ donor if you're not already. I frequently, every 8 weeks, pretty much on the dot, I go and donate blood at a local kind of blood bank. There's probably one in your neighborhood. Blood is also another thing that is usually in short supply. So, and blood is actually a really simple thing. Your body produces enough of it that you can donate a pint every 8 weeks, and your body just produces more. But there is a need for that as well, and doctors can't pay for that when there's a need. So, again, go out. I would encourage you to go out and donate blood to your local blood banks or Red Cross if you're so inclined. The other thing is, and we'll post some of these links on the Facebook page, but there's the organization that Dr. Fry Revere is involved with, is the Center for Ethical Solutions, and you'll find a link to her book, but also ways that you can kind of get involved and volunteer or just get the word out on how to fix or right size this crazy restriction that we have in as it comes to organs in the marketplace. And so I would just say, like we do here often on the show, is the idea here is to get you to think, to get you to react, spread the word, talk to people about it, share links, share the link to this broadcast if you can, but also just get the word out to people that especially if they haven't thought about this and thought about the injustice that we are perpetuating and causing because of our complacency with NOTA and the other regulations on the books. Get people aware and just start, getting the word out to people that this is something that we need to change, like today.
Education is key.
Yep.
Fantastic job. I just wanted to add or point out three things. There's nothing new here. Tim's already got everything covered here, but I think they were important. One of the objections is essentially exploitation of the poor, right? And my question on that is, are the poor exploited in food markets? Are they exploited in a free market for automobiles? Are they exploited in a free market for cell phones? Right. So people point to this. I'm like, well, I think they're better off because there's a free market in these items. So why would they not be better off in a free market for the organs as well? Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is, when we talked earlier, you opened basically with, when I'm responsible for my choices, right? When I truly am, I have the incentive, to make, choices that make me more well off or make me well off rather than not as well off, right? So when I bear the consequences of the bad ones, but I also can bear the fruit of making good ones.
Yep.
And I think it puts that incentive in place for people to do something when I maybe wouldn't be able to bear the fruit of it. My insurance policy, if I have socialized medicine, I'm paying the same amount regardless whether I smoke a pack of cigarettes a day or not, because who cares?
Right. The other thing about that too, Tom, is as it comes to incentives, when we give control to a government or to an agency or someone other than ourselves to make our choices for us, generally speaking, they don't have the incentive. The incentive doesn't exist for them,
right,
to make the best choices on your behalf. Most of the time, their choices are motivated by other things, like making quotas, like making sure that they use up all of their resources that they're budgeted. I mean, their motivations, the things that motivate them, are far from what's in your best interest.
And maybe completely in contrast with that.
Exactly.
And the other thing is, again, when you socialize these costs, right, when you do this stuff, you do create a continuum problem, like you spoke to earlier about your choices. How are we going to determine, is one burger a month okay? Is two? Is three? It's going to be arbitrarily decided at some point, right? So again, you take away my choice that I don't have that choice. I assume they will get as far as, well, wait a minute, if the cost of medical care or the cost of kidneys is socialized, then we're going to basically socialize everything, as you alluded to earlier, and somebody's going to make the determination of how many cheeseburgers I get to eat per month. Right. And there's going to be the cheeseburger Gestapo looking out after me. Right. Anyway, we will have to go, but you did a great job of wrapping up. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Tim, before I kind of stole your thunder there at the end?
No, not. I think, like I said, I just, if you're out there and you're listening to this, share this link with other people, get them to listen to the show. I know it goes a little long, but hopefully I was able to keep your interest through it all. And I would just say that the big thing is just educate people, talk to people. It's, if you listen to their objections, if you listen to the things that they just assume to be, unpack it for them. Help show people that, maybe you haven't thought this through and maybe this is a better way to think about these things.
Absolutely.
But yeah, get the word out there to people to think about this thing in a different way.
Before I throw it over to Brad to close us out for the day, I just want to thank you for bringing all this information to us and putting this together. It was I thought it was extremely interesting. And you did point out to, basically what the detractors would likely say to you. I think you did a good job in defeating those arguments. So wonderful. I learned a lot. And I'm very appreciative of what you did tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom.
I would absolutely second that. Well done, Tim. Thank you very much. Great to have you on the show, as always.
Thanks, Brad.
And I'm stealing your word. Unpack it for him. There you go. That's a good illustrating word. Very, very, very well done. So thank you, everybody, for listening to us. As Tom always says, tell your friends about us, even tell your enemies. What greater sentence could you give somebody than to tell them about our show? But challenge them, send them our way. Yeah. We appreciate it a lot. Next episode is next Tuesday night, usual bat time, 7 p.m. Central Time. And Tom's calling it Rage Against the Machine. So you'll want to tune in for that. We hope that, as we've said many times already in this show, we hope that we've provoked you to think. We'll love to hear your comments. Thanks for listening. We look forward to having you on our next discussion. Till next time, say good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for listening. This has been the Annoying Peasant Radio Show. Here we go. Mac DeMarco on the way out. Good night.